Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session with Vibresonate.top. So, this next session that I am going to be recording here is for balancing your emotions. Now, we're going to be kind of working kind of in a little different way. I mean, the corrections are all going to be the same and everything, but the format that we're doing it is a little bit different. We are going to be working more in the subtle bodies, which to some people, that doesn't mean anything. Basically, we're going to be working more in the layers of the aura. And each correction is going to be in a different layer of that aura. So I could go into a lot of detail about aura, but what most people think of aura is actually your body's energy system kind of extended out. Now, it seems like it's kind of some people kind of have a problem talking about auras, but I'm going to kind of give you an idea. Like, okay, I actually will see the outer fringes of auras. And when you're actually driving along on a highway and you actually see that, you kind of see the heat rising off on the highway. That's kind of what an aura looks like to me. Just a little fringe around the outside. Even inanimate objects can have a little bit of an aura if you look hard enough, but especially people. Now, auras can extend quite a ways out, or people can pull them right back in. I actually have a few TikTok videos on this, and it's a very interesting subject when you get into it. What we're going to be doing is just kind of balancing our emotions, and we're going to be working in that aura system to help balance those emotions. So that is the name of our session that we're going to work with. And this is a general type session for anyone in general. It's intended to kind of hopefully give you a calming effect and give you some functionality in the emotions area. So how that affects you, it may be a little bit different for every person. So as we get started here, again, the topic is balancing my emotions. We are going to begin working in the etheric layer, which is basically your feelings layer. I believe it's the second level, and we're gonna work in the connection or into the connected area. So we kind of it's kind of I don't know how to really explain it, but even though we're working in the areas, we're working in the connected area to connect everything. So we're going to start with a being not being correction. And I'm looking at my notes saying that I didn't put everything down here, but when I started looking at it, I realized what exactly I was intending here. So a being not being correction is basically you have stress with being a certain way, and you have stress with not being a certain way. And that is, and we're going to kind of work with that right now. So we have two sets of these. So we're going to start out with being jumpy. So what I basically want you to do is repeat that word in your mind, and just one sec here. Sorry, I had a really annoying cat in the background clawing at something she shouldn't have been, just to get my attention here. Sorry. But being jumpy, I want you to repeat that in your mind, and I'm going to kind of help guide you through the thinking process with it. So being jumpy. Being jumpy. Now, I want you to think about it from your emotions state, what being jumpy means from your emotions, from the position of your emotions. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Are you agitated? Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Is it a form of nervousness? Something like that. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Are you like that around certain people? Think about who that is. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Is it during a certain time or an event? Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Does it cause problems in certain situations? Being jumpy. Being jumpy. being jumpy. Does it bring a certain emotion about it? Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Being jumpy. Okay. So before we move on to the next part of the correction, um, if you need to continue to sit with this and you don't feel quite done, just back it up to where, just a few minutes to where, just before I started speaking again, and press pause. And the energy will continue to come, be in that area. Now, how do you know? Well, everyone's a little bit different. One of the things that a lot of people find is when they're nearing the end of the correction, where they're starting to correct, sometimes they have a hard time focusing. And that often is an indication that you are finished. Another indication that you're finished could be you may yawn or sigh or something like that. And that could also indicate that you're done. But if you're not so sure and you want to back up, and go ahead, back up and continue to work with that one. We're going to move into the other end of that correction now. And it's not being jumpy. Like I said, the stress is with being that state and not being that state. So we're going to work into the not being state, this not being jumpy. I want you to think about that in the back of your mind, not being jumpy. Just repeat it in the back of your mind, not being jumpy. Not being jumpy. Let your thoughts go into what that might be. Not being jumpy. Maybe you don't have emotion. Or maybe you would like to not have as much emotion, not being jumpy. Think about that. Not being jumpy. Maybe this is tied to a certain emotional state. Not being jumpy. Not being jumpy. Maybe you feel a certain kind of detachment from something, especially in the emotions, not being jumpy. Not being jumpy. Is connected to feelings or lack of feelings. Not being jumpy. Not being jumpy. Not being jumpy. Maybe you've been told you don't react right to something. Not being jumpy. 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 Again, if you feel you need to back up and hold this longer, by all means, back up to just before I started talking and hit pause. Okay, we're going to move on to another set under this same direction. And it's the being, not being format here. So the first one is being sensitive. Being sensitive. I want you to repeat that in the back of your mind now. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Are you overly sensitive to certain issues or certain things? Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Has the sensitivity kind of got in the way of things, emotions, everyday life? Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Is it with just certain people? Your emotions get high. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Is it in certain situations? Brings agitation, anxiety, stuff like that. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Are you empathic? You feel a lot of empathy, almost too much so. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Not all of this will apply to everyone, but maybe some of this will. And stick with something that does before moving on to another thing that I have mentioned here. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Is it just workplace related? Or a certain person at work? Or a certain situation at work? Your boss? Rule changes? Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Does your sensitivity generate certain emotions that are hard to control? or lack of that you would want to generate those emotions. Being sensitive. Are you stuck at generating the emotions you want to? Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Being sensitive. Okay, if you feel you need to pause the video and go back and do this a little longer, go ahead. Just back it up a little bit. That's the beauty of video. You can do that if you can, because we put all the intention into this video. You are able to do that. So I encourage you to do that if you feel you need to do so. We're going to go into the next half now of this correction, this particular correction, and that is the other end of it, not being sensitive. So I want you to settle into that one, repeating it in the back of your mind, not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Again, would you rather be not as sensitive, or do you think you're not sensitive enough? Being sensitive, not being sensitive. Think how this applies. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Is not being sensitive tied to emotion or lack thereof? Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Is tied into a certain person, place, or event. Not being sensitive. Not being sensitive. Maybe it's all three. Not being sensitive. Not be insensitive. Maybe you're choosing to not be sensitive to certain situations, just to block out your emotions. Not being sensitive. Is that causing stress? Not being sensitive. 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 Okay, again, if you feel you need to sit with us a little longer, just back up the video a little bit, and then press pause. Okay, so that takes care of the first correction, the first area. We're now going to go into the mental or the mind part of your aura. And some people say even our thoughts and memories are stored out here. I'm not one to dispute it. I don't know. I do know that my feelings sometimes are felt as far as out here. So under the for balancing my emotions in the mental or the mind area of the aura, we're going to work in the organizing area. We're going to work at organizing. So we are going to start with some miscellaneous concepts. And all of these are related on a certain level together, or they're all connected somehow. That's the best way of describing it. So we're going to start with the first one. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Read that one more time. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. That can be quite common, more common than one thinks. Funny that this is not a fear correction. This is actually coming up as a miscellaneous concept, but here we go. So I want you to think about that in the back of your mind. Repeat those words. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Allow yourself to go into thinking about that. Maybe there's a certain situation that comes to mind right away. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Is this something that stimulates extreme emotions? Or maybe lack of? Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Do your emotions get out of control when that happens? Or do you fear that your emotions will get out of control when that happens? Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Maybe you have an unhealthy relationship with fear. What does that mean? Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. What does that look like? Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear things will happen to me beyond my control. Fear that things will happen to me beyond my control. Okay, again, you can pause the video and back it up a few minutes and continue on if you feel you need to work with this a little bit longer. You read your own body. I give you a few little tips in the beginning to help you out with that. I know not everyone knows how to muscle test, but you, if you still feel you need to continue, go ahead. It's not going to harm you to continue on and hold it a little longer. We're going to go into the next point under these miscellaneous concepts. And along the line of fear again. Very simple though. It's not as long a phrase here. It's I feel afraid. I feel afraid. Think about that one in the back of your mind. Repeat that in the back of your mind. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. Why is that? I feel afraid. Do you see some connection to the previous correction we did? I feel afraid. I feel afraid. What are you afraid of? Think about that for a minute. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. Is it related to a certain person, place, thing, or event? I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. Is it financial? Financial fear. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. And when you're feeling afraid, is it driving your emotions in a direction you don't like? I feel afraid. I feel afraid. What is that direction? I feel afraid. I feel afraid. Emotionally, do you feel like you don't have any control? I feel afraid. Feel tense? I feel afraid. 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 Okay, again, if you need to go back a few minutes or a few seconds, 20, 30, pause it and continue to hold this correction if you feel you need it. Okay, and the last miscellaneous concept here is relaxed. A little bit better, isn't it? Just think the word relaxed in the back of your mind. Relaxed. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Relaxed. Are you struggling to become relaxed? Relaxed. 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 Maybe you're too relaxed. 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 relaxed, relaxed. Relaxed. Okay. Again, if you need to pause the video, go back and pause the video. Go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to now move into the last correction. Now, this last correction is under the monadic, if I say that right, or the spiritual level of your subtle bodies. And we're working in stability right now. We're going to do a unification structure. And these have been kind of coming up quite a bit on these. And generally, you don't see a lot of these coming up until after a person's had a lot of corrections. So you might be getting a real whopper with it. That's okay. That's good. I find these are really good corrections, and they seem to take a little bit of coordination sometimes, but it seems to really kind of sort out your energy system a little bit for me. I don't know. There's probably a better way of describing it. But, anyways, we're going to do one. It's called Doing Understanding. And there is a mood we have to generate and an emotion, which seems a little bit complicated. But mood is almost like your attitude, and your emotion is a little bit different. It's kind of like the feelings inside. So, what I want you to do is we're going to start off by generating the mood, and then we're going to go into adding that emotion. Okay. So our mood is being weighed down, weighed down, like the whole world's riding on your shoulders, just that attitude. I don't want that attitude. So let's start going into that right now. It's like, poor me, everything's weighed down from everyone else's problems, hey? That type of thing. Honestly, I don't feel that way with you guys, but that kind of an attitude. Weighed down. And then our emotion is insignificant. Kind of goes hand in hand to some degree there. So we're generating that attitude or that mood of weighed down, being weighed down. And our emotion is insignificant. It's insignificant. Some people may have workplaces that can generate those exact feelings, moods, and emotions. Weighed down with a lot of work to do. have you automatically generate that emotion that you're insignificant to the boss. Why try, hey? I'm just insignificant. 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 Okay, so if you need to back up and do that correction again, now's the time to do that. This brings us to the end of our session. There may be plenty more in and around your energy, your frequency, and everything else. Just check out vibresonate.top, and you might find other ones to complement this particular workup. Don't do them back to back. Give yourself some time, like a day or two in between, before you do another one. But your body's gonna get to a point where it's overloaded and more information coming in. It's gonna just kind of turn off for a while. It receives it, but it won't process it for a while. So don't force yourself to do stuff back to back to back. Now, when I'm working with people, I may also be getting the corrections. I think I might have got a few at this one too. But um, what my body does, because I'm working with people, is it'll store it till later when I'm not actually working with people, and then it starts to process. You might find that too, if you're busy with something, you might find you start to process later or in your sleep or something like that. That's okay too. But give yourself a day or two before you move on to another one. Um, in some cases, let your body have that time to process this. Now you may have to you may go ahead and do them, but what's going to happen is your body's going to store them all up, and might take a while for it to process it properly, and you might not notice results for a while. So also, if you feel that this has brought up some topics that you think you need more work on, please go to the link we provided in vibresonate.top and book your appointments. All appointments for members at vibresonate.top, unless of course they're on another plan of some sort, they get 25% off. So make sure you're logged in to find that link. Otherwise, you're going to get full price. Don't go to the main iMatter Wellness website to book. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at vibresonate@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to connect with you, answer your questions. Anyways, you guys have a great day. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you soon.